let's finish this painting. So I'm adding some gray into my white, or some black into my white, so that I've got some gray, and it's very light. I'm just adding the highlight here for some rocks. So just add in little spots that are going to be rocks, different shapes and sizes. Kind of layer them if you want, some a little bit bigger. And then I'm going to add them back into this, a little bit back in the middle ground here as well, just to kind of tie it all together. And just the highlight color at this point will go in next with our darker color, or just our brown shade, and we're just adding a shadow to each one of these little rocks. So obviously the fire is going to be right here in the middle. So all of these rocks around it, there's going to be a bright side, and then there's going to be the shadow on the far side. So pretend we have the fire in place, and where would the light be hitting and where would the shadow be? So obviously the darkest edge is the farthest away, all the way around. Even on the background rocks over here, you still want a little bit of dimension to be obvious here. And you can add a little bit of, go back and forth with this. If you add a little too much shadow, just go back in with your highlight color until you're happy with the shapes of your rocks. And just kind of a variety of angles and the way that the fire would be hitting it. So we're not talking about the way the sun is hitting it at this point. Usually that is what we're doing, but right now the light source is going to be the fire on these close-up rocks here. So I'm just adding a few extra ones, a little bit bigger, kind of almost, they're not even all the way in the picture, so they're kind of cut in half around the rim on the angles here that we're adding in. So it just kind of gives it that foreground a little more depth, a little more realism, because some of the rocks are kind of just cut off. So play around with how big you want your shaped rocks and how much is actually in view. And that one right here in front is going to be almost all dark, because the back half of it is going to be in the shadow, and then the highlighted portion would actually be out of our view from this angle. And we're adding a few little flat ones that maybe don't stick up as much, just so there's some variety and some interest. And now we get into our fire. So I just have my orange, yellow, and a little bit of white to mix into my yellow if I want bright yellow. I'm going to start with the bright yellow. I'm just dabbing in with my angled detail brush here, so it's nice thin swipes, little like dotting almost. I'm just tapping the brush. I want it to be very dainty. I want it to be very wispy. You do not want to go in here with a ton of paint on your brush. Fire is a little bit transparent. It needs to be, able to move and not be just a block of one color. So you will be jumping around between the orange, the yellow, a little bit of white in the very center of the fire, and just take your time with this, because it's not going to look perfect right away. You might start to be like, oh man, this doesn't look anything like fire. But as you continue adding layers, it'll start to kind of jump out at you, and you'll see what you want to add. So in a fire, the farthest away from the center of a fire is the orange, and then it's yellow, and then the very base or the core of the fire is going to be the white. And then I'm also going in and adding some logs here with just that straight brown color. We'll cover them up just a little bit, but you want to have those kind of jetting up into the center of your fire here. So I'm just doing a little crisscross with my logs, and then you'll go back in with clean off your brush, and then go back in with your fire colors. Again, jumping around between the three. I'm kind of highlighting the center here, so I'm going to stick with my whiter. It isn't straight white, it's a little bit of yellow mixed in with my white. It does look a little bit so bright that it looks like white, but you want to be careful with that and not overuse it. That's going to stay in the very core, like we said. And then jump out with a little more yellow as you go out to the edges. I'm using the very tip of my brush to add a little, almost like the coals underneath the fire would be, kind of just glowing almost. So add those little details in here. Try not to cover too much. And again, if you do cover too much, you can go back and forth with the shadows and the highlights like we've been doing. There's nothing that has to be final at this stage, and you can really just play around with it until you're happy. I'm just dotting in some more of the orange around the outside, and you can still see that you can see through the fire in some places. I'm going to cover up some of that, but you do want to be able to see some transparency. So don't take away that detail, and just add like little sparks. You know, fires at the very top get very dotted and random. You know, it really is just a playing around with it until you're happy with the shape, seeing what the colors are doing. Have a photo of a fire in front of you if you'd like. If you want a specific shape fire, if you want it to be a little more messy. I'm going for more of a clean campfire looking, kind of that oval teardrop kind of shape. But if you want to play around and have it be a little more messy, there's lots of different types of fires you could do. So definitely jump into that. And if you cover up too much of your logs, just bring them back out. I kind of wanted that edge to be a little more obvious, so I'm just going in again and making sure that's still there. I'm starting to see the detail come together. A little bit of flicks of fire at the very base where it's the very, very hottest. That white, just reserve that for the very, very center. And then you can also add some little dots of embers that might be kind of flying up and away from the fire, adding just some really cool, and a cool element as it covers up some of those background trees. And then the final thing, we're going to dab in some bright orange little grassy elements here, just so what would be kind of glowing with the fire. So I hope this has been a fun one. There's a lot to it. There's been a lot of elements. We've built it and we've grown it to this, and I really hope you're happy with what you've built. All right, I'll talk to you later.